Hey friends, welcome back to this week's episode. Today we are joined by someone I'm really excited to learn about and learn from. Emily Walker is a new friend to me. She was introduced to me by one of my amazing speakers from the Creative Educator Conference, and she connected us because we actually do a lot of the same things. And uniquely, the things that we do are not actually talked about a ton in our industry and so needed. So I'm very excited to have someone here who is offering the same things I'm offering in probably a different way and get to know her takes on all of these things. So we're going to dive in with Emily. Emily Walker is a learning designer and program creation mentor. So if you guys have been around here for a long time, you know that through my work with the Creative Educator Academy, through the Educators Lounge, my membership, and then of course the Creative Educator Conference, that's my goal as well, is to eliminate crappy courses, crappy programs. And I love that we're so aligned in this. Now, Emily is an expert in architecting life-changing online programs, so needed. And she is known for her unique approach in the course creation industry. She blends together equal parts of learning psychology, intuition, and a firm belief in doing things in a way that feels deliciously like you, which what a fun way to put that. So I am excited to have her join us and to talk all about all things education and really, really impactful programs for our students. And I think nobody really does this, right? They talk about selling, but they don't talk about the creation process and how important that is, unless you listen to this and then you've heard me a million times be like, please don't pre-launch a course and then create it in 2 days. Thank you so much. So Emily, I'm going to just turn the mic over to you. I want to hear all about like your background, why this is important to you. Our listeners know my background as an educator and how important it is to me. And I'm just like, I'm so thrilled to find someone kindred in this arena. So tell me all about yourself.
Oh my goodness. Best introduction ever. That was amazing. I am so excited to be here. I'm so excited to nerd out about all these things / rage out about a lot of these things. I think we just see so eye to eye on a lot of the stuff that's going on in the industry. I often say that my journey started with a lot of rage because basically I face planted into the field of learning design while running away from being a French teacher. I was fully on track to be I'm going to be public school French teacher. This is my jam. I love teaching. I love French. I love education. And then I was ooh, I don't love the idea of the public school system. So what are my other options? And that's when I really uncovered learning design. And I realized I love a good puzzle. I love a good mess. I love a good give me your chaos and let me weave it together into a journey. And while I was doing that kind of in the corporate world, I realized okay, I love learning design, but I do not love corporate subjects like hazardous materials and mold and asbestos. And I was this is not for me.
That's fair.
It's just no, I don't need to do 100 pages of slides, just being and this will kill you, and this will kill you, and this will kill you. It's there's got to be something better. And so I kind of started casting my net to be who else could use learning design? What other ways could I apply this? And kind of around that time, I started seeing all of these online coaches, all of these online marketers being I've got this program, I'm going to help you build and launch and sell your course. And I'm okay, great. They're proof I can do this too. Let me kind of suss the vibe, see how they're doing this. And I realized that most of these big coaches, their programs were step 1, choose your topic. Step 2, somehow design your course. I don't really know. Steps 3 to 17, here's how to market it. Here's how to build your webinars. Here's how to build your funnel. Sell, sell, sell. Look at all the millions I've made. And I was wait a second. We're missing some steps.
The most important ones. It's casual. It's casual.
It's casual. It's fine. We don't really care if people get results or if you like delivering your program, just regurgitate what someone else has done and you can print money and sip margaritas on a beach and you'll be fine. And I was okay, there's got to be a better way. And that's really from where I launched my business. Was I was I see people out there who they've either gone through these programs and they're still stuck because they're it's not working for me, or it doesn't work for my lifestyle, or I have too much nuance and complexity in my work, or I care too much about the value that I want to bring to my people. And they needed help being how do we architect your brilliance into a course, into an ecosystem of offers that not only is going to deliver like incredible impact for your people, but works for you to deliver and works for you and like sustains the type of life you want to live. Because the type of ecosystem someone who has kids, who wants to be like at home with their family, who wants to have like spaciousness in their schedule for that versus the type of ecosystem that you would have for someone who is, like a solopreneur traveling the world versus someone who's like, I want to take over the world with like talks and books. They're all going to be very different. And you can't just like funnel people into this like one squishy little way of doing things. So that's kind of really where I was like, all right, let me show people a better way. Like, let me help people do this in a way that's actually impactful.
Oh, I love that. I mean, I feel like our listeners are going to be like, Laylee is over there being like, yes, absolutely. I feel like everything that you said, I mean, even the rage part, it's just because it's so infuriating to see these coaches for coaches come out and say, I mean, my people have heard me rant about the pre-sell your course and then create it really quickly within, and they skip the most important part, which is the curriculum design and the lesson planning and actually like thinking about what the end result should be and how to get your people there. And then even more important, how to actually make sure that they got there and not just like leave them in the dust. So I'd love to ask like so many questions, but we keep this podcast pretty short. So I'm going to pick my like top few, but I would love to hear, in your experience working with entrepreneurs who are wanting to create actually really pivotal and impactful and effective programs, what are like maybe the top two or even three, if you can't pick two, whatever, the top mistakes that you see people making before they come to you for the help, like before they realize like something is missing here?
Yeah, absolutely. It was such a great question. I would say, like, the top mistake that I think comes to mind, first and foremost, is people taking a very content focused lens to how they're like, I want to create a course, I want to create a workshop, I want to create a membership, whatever it is, like any sort of scalable offer. And they go, what do I know? And how can I share that? And what happens is I see people who are like, they're trying to take everything they know and everything they bring and through their one-to-one work and shove it into a scalable offer. And it ends
Right.
up being so overwhelming for everyone involved because the goal of your course, the goal of your program is not to replicate everything that you know. It's not to try to like create a little mini you and like shove as much knowledge as possible in. And that kind of is tough because that mindset of like it's about the content is aggravated by this narrative in the marketing world of volume equals value. Like, look at this
Mm.
membership I have where you're going to get all of these new resources and all of these calls and all of these courses and all of these things. And it's like, but are any of those actually going to help you take action? Because I always say, like, transformation doesn't come from information, it comes from implementation. And our goal through all of our programs, as you know, is to get our people to take action. And so I think where a lot of people get stuck is they're sitting down and being like, oh, I can teach this, I can teach this, I can teach this, I can talk about this. Instead of going, what do I want my people to do? What skills am I teaching them? And to what degree of mastery do I want to teach them these skills? And then that, when we start shifting our lens and start focusing on action instead of content, everything becomes a lot easier.
Yeah, that makes so much sense to me. I completely agree. And I feel like it is interesting because I do think that's something that we're hearing all the time and something that I have even said. Now, I say this with a lot of caveats, like a lot, but just so you know. But, the concept that like there's always somebody a few steps behind you that needs to learn what you know. Like, yes, at its most rudimentary level, that is accurate that you have more information than somebody else. But when you're distilling that into a program, I agree that it's not enough just to regurgitate that content. So, what would you say would be the first step to fix that then?
Yeah. So I think it starts by clearly defining and like I mean with like a high level of specificity what the outcome of your program is. Because I think, again, we see this from the marketers, like, what's the transformation? But like often the transformation is like people feel better, like their life is better, they have more money, which is like, yes, in a vague level. But when we get to the specifics of it, like how are they thinking? How are they feeling? And what are they doing differently? Like if we literally think about your program is like a step by step, like brick by brick road for your people from where they are to where they're going. Where are you taking them? Because it's the difference of being like, I'm taking them to Paris versus like, oh, I'm taking them to the Trocadero entrance of the Eiffel Tower. Like you're going to give very different directions to people. And so when you bring this level of specificity, instead of being like, I help people write their sales page, going, I equip people with the tools and templates and the ability to find their own voice so that they can build a sales page that like works for them. Getting clear on like, are you teaching them how to write like a master copywriter? Are you teaching them how to just like use some templates and customize it? You know, once you have that specificity, then you're able to ask yourself, what do my people need to do? And literally, like, I encourage people, like, you can use post-it notes, you can write down all the action steps and try to avoid things like they need to understand this or they need to know this. Like, we want to skip the understanding, we want to skip the knowing and get right to the like the doing. What do they need to do? And that's going to start building a very, very clear roadmap of like what needs to be accomplished in your program. And very often what ends up happening is they go, oh, they have to do a lot of things. And I go, yeah, maybe your scope is a little bit too big.
Like, oh, I knew that, but I led you there. I'm glad you caught up. I love that so much. Oh my gosh, that's such a great, like, tangible way to explain that. And I think that hopefully it gives people a good exercise to go through as well. So I love that. I love the mistake of that content-based thought process and then reframing the concept of a transformation. Is there another like top mistake that you see a lot of that maybe just like one you feel like is perpetuated by possibly bad information from other coaches? I mean, it's because it's not people's fault, right? I always tell people like, it's not your fault if you've been trained by our social media based society right now that the way somebody else is doing something is just the way that you should do it, even though that's not true. So whether that's what you're seeing or it's just, you know, bad advice that's out there, is there another one that really like you're passionate about debunking?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, you totally hit the nail on the head of where I was like, oh yeah, I have strong opinions on this. And I think it's exactly what you said. It's the mistake of trying to copy what someone else is doing. And I think this is perpetuated at like the highest level of the industry because I've even seen a coach who bought one of those like top selling programs of like, I'll help you like create and sell your course. And I had actually like audited this person's course, like the coach who had bought it. And I'd seen behind the scenes of it. And I was like, you need some help. Like, you know, like not to be judgy or shamey or anything. It's just like you don't know what you don't know. And, you know, teaching and learning design and facilitation are skill sets that have to be crafted or outsourced, not just like whipped together, you know, in overnight. And I had seen behind the scenes of this person's course and I was like, oh, you need some love. And then I saw them being this like huge testimonial for this big selling course. And now most recently, I have seen this person selling their own course on how to create courses. And so what ends up happening, yeah,
my
horror.
face, like for anybody not watching this on YouTube, my face just like was shook. It's fine.
So what we have happening is the people at the very top of the industry who actually are not course creation experts. They don't have a teaching background. They don't have a learning design background. They don't have a facilitation background. They have a marketing background. And I would have no problem with what they're doing if they just owned that they are marketing experts teaching a marketing program. And what happens is they have only ever created one course, and it's the course on how to create courses. And then they teach everyone how to create a course that way. And then a lot of these people then eventually make enough money just by the marketing tactics that they have learned to then sell their own courses on courses. And so we get this like flood of programs that look the same way of like, oh, well, if I have a self-study course, it's got to be this linear modular course. I've got a group program. It means I need to have a Facebook community and weekly group calls and content. I have a membership. It means I need to create a new resource every month or whatever it is, these like arbitrary rules, I'm using air quotes, that like are from nowhere. Like literally they're from nowhere. And so I see people telling themselves, if I want to be successful, I need to like copy one of these models. But in my experience, I have found through my clients is they kind of come to me like one of two ways. They either have an existing program that is literally making their brain melt out of their ears. They're like, their soul is dying. They're so unhappy because they are squishing themselves into burnout through this program design. And I go, okay, like, let's change things. Or they are starting from scratch and they're afraid to break the rules. They're like, I know I don't want what I'm seeing, but I don't know what else is out there. And what I have found is that these clients that take that courageous step to go, I'm going to do things differently. Like I'm going to build multiple pathways using like customized assessments through this program. I'm going to create a hybrid incubator that uses some curriculum and some, one-to-one milestones. I'm going to build a membership that actually like doesn't promise something new every month if I don't want to create something new every month, which if you do, that's great, like amazing, but you don't have to. And so it's one of those things where when I see these clients leaning into like what really lights them up and going, you get to have it all. You get to have the amazing, powerful results that you want for your people, because I know that is our people's number one priority. But that doesn't have to come at the cost of what matters most to you. Like anything is possible when we're intentional about the architecture. And that's where I see my clients getting the repeat sales. They're having the big launches. They're having the successful programs because it's sustainable. It's not just like, anyone could whip together a program and like promise the moon. And, if they had a big enough audience and they have the marketing tactics, make a lot of money. But all a launch number tells you is how good someone is at marketing. It doesn't tell you anything about the quality of the program. And so I'm starting to feel off topic here. My point is that we really want to make sure that we're designing a program that works for us, because when it works for us, then we are able to hold our people better.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, yes. Amen to all of that. I do have a follow-up question to that. But before I get to the follow-up question, when you were going off, like when you claimed to go off topic, I loved that because I actually wanted to just reiterate, I think how freeing it is to understand that when a launch doesn't go well or does go well, it doesn't reflect necessarily on you as the educator. I just think that that's a really important thing to hear if you are somebody who put a lot of thought into their program and the program isn't selling. It may or may not be, but it may not be the program itself. It might just be your marketing and vice versa. Like, I love that you just put that out there. I feel like that's going to be so encouraging for people to hear that we don't need to be comparing our education and our programs to other educators and other programs, but maybe the marketing is where that big disparity between the two happens, between the launches happens. And then my follow-up question to the initial thought process was, how would you guide somebody in, I guess, starting to discover a unique way of doing things? Because it is hard. And I know that from experience where I have done a copy and paste and I have done many unique tries, and some of them go well and some of them don't. But how would you guide someone in kind of like shutting out that noise, putting their blinders on, and like creating their own path in that?
Oh, such a great question. What I would really say, like something I always do with my clients and I encourage everyone to do when they're creating a scalable offer, is start by making a hell yes and a hell no list. Like, what are your like absolute non-negotiables? Like, I have some clients who are like, I love live touch points with my people. Like, I don't ever want to scale out of having some one-to-one with my people. So that's like, we need to keep that in the program. And I have other clients that are like, I love my people, but if I never had to talk to them again and I could trust that my program would support them, that'd be great. Or, it can be on the micro level of like, I find slides super draining. I don't want to have them. Like, how can I teach without them? So we often have these little pings of things that we're like, I truly, truly hate this. Like, I don't want this. And then we're like, oh, well, like, I have to have a community. Like, I could not have a community. Like, everyone needs a community. And it's like, if you're not prepared to nurture and grow and engage in that community, like, please don't. And so when we start by making our hell yes and our hell no's, when we start looking at what's on the no list, if we're feeling that like, ooh, I'm feeling like I should have the community, ask yourself why. Do you want connection? Do you want an opportunity for people to get clarity and ask questions? Do you want them to connect with other people? And when we get to the intentionality beneath those things, that's when we can start to get creative, which I know everyone listening to this podcast has no shortage of creative ideas. And so if we go, oh, well, the reason I'm feeling like I need a community is because I want people to be able to ask questions. Okay, great. Can they submit it through a weekly form? Can you respond asynchronously through Q&A? Can you build a Q&A library? Can they get email access to you? Can you offer Q&A calls? Like, there are lots of different ways of meeting the same objective. So I always encourage people to kind of start there. And then we kind of move out to what is the journey that we're taking people on, and thinking about like, our goal is to kind of get people taking action as soon as possible, but also mimicking their real life context as much as possible. And I think this is where, in general, I'm an advocate for like hiring support as part of this process, because it is very hard if you have not been in the field of education to hold and balance all the things that, like, I know you know this so well, Lily, that you have to like hold when you're designing the educational experience, because there's the learning outcomes of like, what are we teaching people and how are they practicing that and how are they doing that? There's the lens of how am I honoring neurodiversity and different lived experience and bringing a trauma informed lens to my work? How am I honoring how I like to show up as a teacher and how I like to facilitate, as well as the journey? And our goal is to make that as simple as possible. And it's a very strange situation to be in of like, how do I honor complexity in a simple way? And so if it feels complex for people, like it is, and you're not doing something wrong, and like that's okay.
Yeah, I love that. And I feel like it can feel really overwhelming when you think about it from that standpoint of like, how do you simplify something so complex? So I would love to hear, just like for anybody who's maybe feeling overwhelmed at hearing all of the things they need to have in mind, but they're not quite at the place to like hire a coach or get the help. What would be maybe a few like tips or words of encouragement that you could share to kind of speak to that?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think my favorite thing about this is that, like, the same things that we implement for honoring, like, a learner who maybe has ADHD or a learner who has experienced trauma or just anyone who wants a good learning experience, the strategies are the same. So it's not like we're like, oh, I'm on like two completely different opposite ends here and I have to choose. Ultimately, like, I refer to them as like the four horsemen of the course apocalypse. And these are the four things that, if they happen in your program, it's going to cause someone to exit the experience and not get what they need out of it. And that's boredom, confusion, procrastination, and overwhelm. And all of these can be solved by being incredibly clear and incredibly specific at any given time. So when you're thinking about what we talked about earlier in this episode of like, we know the journey, we know the action steps that we need people to take along the journey. So now we're getting into like, I have to teach people how to do this thing. We just want to be really clear about like, I am teaching you how to take this step. So for instance, we'll use our sales page course. Again, I always default to the sales page course. It's like my go-to example. We know that we're not just going to be like, hey, great, write your sales page. Like the very first thing, it might be like, okay, first we're going to start by setting the intention of like, what is the goal of the sales page and who are we speaking to? So I need to teach you how to tune into your ideal client avatar. We explain, all right, this is what I'm going to teach you. This is why I'm going to teach you this. This is how it connects to our journey. And this is how you're going to put it into action. And this is what I want you to do next. And it's the this is what I want you to do next piece that people often forget. They're just like, here's your workbook. Bye. See you in the next lesson. And it's like, oh, like if you explain this as if you were teaching an alien, you're probably going to get a lot farther. And it's going to help you with just going like, I know there's a lot of complexity. I know it can feel overwhelming. But if you're like, I am just spoon feeding people, watch this, do this, write this with this workbook. This is what comes next. It's going to be soothing for the nervous system because people aren't exhausting their kind of like cognitive resources wondering what's happening. And they're going to feel very held and they're going to be able to take action.
Yeah, I love that. That reminds me of every time I have a speaking coaching client, because I have the opportunities to coach a lot of speakers. And I always tell them, like, if you're in a classroom style setting, utilize that and be able to tell them what's coming, because I think people just relax when they know it's coming up. It's just like inherent to them. So I love that you explained that and why. And I just feel like there were so many great tips in there. That was incredible. I feel like we have given so much food for thought to all of our listeners who are like either have programs or are creating programs. I would love to hear maybe like if you could give one piece of advice before we round out the episode with our signature question of unpopular opinions. If you could give one piece of advice to anybody who maybe they took one of those quick buy, here's how to sell a course in 3 days and make a ton of money pre-selling it, and it lands flat, doesn't go well. What's the first thing that they should do to overcome that and try again?
Oh, this is such a good one. I want to think on this. I mean, I think the very first thing I would say is just to be so gentle with yourself, because very often we are just really, really mean to ourselves because we buy these programs where people are like, this is my guaranteed success blueprint. And if you follow my steps exactly, you're going to make 10K months. And it's like, but they're not talking about the fact that like, oh, I already had, 7,000 people on my email list and I am promising the outcome of more money, which always sells easier. And there's so much context that's not spoken about. So what happens, and I think we've all been there at some point, is that we take someone else's context, apply it to us, and then expect the same results. And then we feel like we've done something wrong. And something I say again and again and again is like, it's not you, it's the industry. And what people aren't talking about enough, which is why I'm so glad we're having this conversation. I'm so glad that you're talking about this through like your conference and your membership and everything, is that great, impactful, life changing, soul honoring work takes time. Like I often say your body of work is a work of art. And like art is not something that gets rushed. It's not something that is whipped together. We're never like, hey, I made you a present. I just like threw it together in my closet. Hope you love it. Like, no, it's a craft and it is like an act of devotion to our people. Like this is something we're passionate about and we love. And like that takes time. So I would say for people who are like, I tried to pre-sell it and it didn't sell, or like I'm trying to follow this person's method and now it's taking me so much longer than everyone else. It's like you're not doing it wrong. Like you're actually doing it right if it takes time. So it's like just be so gentle with yourself.
I love that. Honestly, like it's so interesting because I have made so many mistakes, even as somebody who has a background in education. Like I was a actual trained professional educator for many years before I joined the creative industry. And I still was making mistakes and I was still extra hard on myself. So I love that you shared that because I just think it's so necessary, especially given the trajectory of where our industry has gone and is going in recent years. And I mean, I can only imagine like the next couple of years, but I feel like since 2020, things have just taken such a harsh turn with so many people coming out and promising so many things to so many people. And it just having this negative impact, not only on the industry and educators as a whole, but most people who want to teach something, they have a desire to help people. I mean, yes, you can desire the money and all the good things that come from it, but at the core, you probably want to be a helpful, good person. Like nobody wants to like take people's money and not deliver. But I do think that sometimes when you dip your toe in with the wrong guidance, it can deter you from ever trying again. And so I love that you shared that because I think that you and I can agree that, amazing things happen when quality education and knowledge and all the beauty behind that is shared well. So that makes me really happy. That was my little soapbox.
I couldn't agree more. And I think that's the thing. Like, it kills my soul when I see people being like, courses suck, online courses are terrible, the group program is dead. And I'm like, any of these formats are like, they're neutral. Like, at their core, they're neutral. And unfortunately, yes, there has been this like wave of terrible courses to the point that like now I'm seeing so many people on their sales page disclaiming, being like, this isn't like your average online course. Like, this just doesn't have a ton of fluff. And I'm like, no, the average online course, like the bar is too low. The bar is on the floor. Like, what we need to do is raise the bar because exactly like you said, like education is empowerment. Like, education is how we change the world. And that is something I'm a huge advocate for. And so it's a matter of finding each person's gateway into it and finding the way, like, how do you want to share your message and how do you want to educate and how do you want to architect transformation for your people?
Yeah, I love that so much. And I wholeheartedly agree. Okay, so rounding out this episode, because I feel like you and I could talk forever, but I would love to hear. I mean, we kind of shared a lot of them, but what would be like one unpopular opinion you have around education in the creative industry?
Ooh, unpopular opinions. Ooh. I mean, I think like one that I know you and I agree on a lot is that I think basically in general, pre-selling is the worst. I think the way that like pre-selling is taught and talked about, yeah, unpopular opinion, pre-selling is not all that it's hyped up to be. Unpopular opinion, I don't give a flying, you know, about your launch numbers, which we already talked about. Like I truly like don't care. And oh, here's the biggest one. I know you asked for one. I'm giving you three.
I love it.
Programs, educational offers are not passive income. I want to find the person who's like, it's passive. You build it once and you sell it forever and just like strangle them. Because if you create your course once and then never touch it again, that's your choice. But I see programs as like living, breathing creatures. They go through a cycle. They are meant to be evolved. Like I would say every 3 to 4 years is like when you want to go through and refresh them and add more, even sooner sometimes. But there's nothing passive about it because they'll be like, oh, I just run ads to it and then I make money. And I'm like, okay, you're running ads. That's not passive. Or if you're not running ads, you're marketing. Or if you have a program that has a community or calls, you're engaging. And there's nothing wrong with that. And it's scalable and it can be sustainably scalable, but it's not passive. And so I think that's like the hill I will die on, like they are not passive income.
No, I love that. I mean, I love all three that you shared, but that last one, I just think it's just, yes, it's absolutely like a misnomer. It's that it can be scalable. It can be a little bit less hands-on than maybe like one-on-one, but it's definitely never going to be passive. That's just like the worst label for it, I think. So,
Yeah, truly, truly.
well, thank you so much for sharing all of your amazing insights, so many tangible things for people to be able to go and get started on, and hopefully a lot of food for thought for everyone. I can't thank you enough. And I just love chatting with somebody who's as passionate about education as I am.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. This was like so wonderful.
It was the best. We'll have to have you back again for sure. All right,
Okay.
y'all. See you guys on the next episode next week. It's a snack size episode next week, and then back to interviews the week after. See you guys then.